Hi, in this video we will start reading about the disorders of kidney and the urinary tract. Starting with first in this video we will discuss the renal anatomy and physiology. Let's start. Each kidney is composed of approximately a million of nephrons and each consists of a glomerulus and a renal tubule. The glomerulus is made of a tuft of capillaries and a central region of the mesangium. Fine. There is in the center in the glomerulus, in the center there is tuft of capillaries and mesangium. The capillaries arise from the afferent arteriole and join to form the efferent arteriole. The capillary wall consists of the fenestrated endothelium, glomerular basement membrane, and the food process called the podocytes of the visceral epithelial cells. This is the capillary wall which consists of. The basement membrane is made up of type 4 collagen. Basement membrane of this is made up of type 4 collagen, lamina, and heparin sulfate proteoglycan. The Bowman space leads into the proximal tubule that has an initial convoluted portion, then the straight segment, descending and ascending limbs of the loop of Henle, and the distal tubule, which will be seen in this figure. We will go through that. 6 to 8 distal tubules join to form the collecting ducts that finally enters the renal pelvis. This all anatomy we are very well aware of, right? This is the distal tubule, and this 6 to 8 they join to form this collecting duct, collecting tubule, and that collecting duct finally enters the renal pelvis. The early part of the distal tubule, on its ascent from the medulla to the cortex, lies near the glomerulus of the same nephron. The cells of the tubule in contact with the afferent arteriole are denser than the rest and are called as the macula densa. So the cells of the distal tubule which are in contact with the afferent arteriole, they are dense. Then that's why they are called as the macula densa. And the smooth muscle cells of the afferent arteriole in this region contain a prominent cytoplasmic granules that are site of the renin activity. Fine. Smooth muscle cells of the afferent arteriole. The juxtaglomerular apparatus is composed of afferent and the efferent arterioles, the macula densa, and the Lassus cells located between these structures. So this is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. The structures that we read, they form it, which are composed of the afferent and the efferent arterioles, the macula densa. We just read, right? What was the macula densa? The cells of the distal tubule in contact with the afferent arteriole, denser than the rest of the cells, are macula densa, and the Lassus cells located between these structures. The juxtaglomerular apparatus is involved in the systemic blood pressure regulation, right? Electrolyte homeostasis, and the tubuloglomerular feedback. So, juxtaglomerular apparatus is an important part of uh, maintaining the blood pressure, homeostasis, and the tubuloglomerular feedback. Now, let's look at this image. These are the parts of the nephron indicating the renal tubular handling of the sodium and potassium. The major sites of the reabsorption are shown with the percentage of the filtered cations in the parenthesis. Parenthesis. So yeah, let's start from here. This is the proximal convoluted tubule in which sodium is reabsorbed and potassium is reabsorbed. 50% of the sodium is reabsorbed and 60 to 70% of the potassium is reabsorbed. Now this is the proximal straight tubule in which 15% of the sodium is reabsorbed. This is the thin descending loop of Henle. This is the thin ascending loop of Henle. Now this is the thick ascending loop of Henle. This thin descending and thin ascending, they are water permeable to the water. So mainly they um, only reabsorb 7% of the sodium. Thick ascending loop of the Henle, they absorb 20% of the sodium, reabsorb. It's just letting it out, okay. And potassium 20 to 25%. Now this is the distal convoluted tubule. This is the collecting duct. collecting tubule, and cortical collecting duct, and the medullary collecting duct. Let's move ahead to the renal physiology. Glomerular filtration depends upon the high pressure in the afferent arteriole. The filtration barrier is constituted by the endothelium with the slit pores, basement membrane, and the porocytes of the visceral epithelial cells. This is what the filtration barrier is made up of: endothelium with the slit pores, basement membrane, and the porocytes of the visceral epithelial cells. Filtration of the solutes depend upon their molecular size, shape, and the electrical charge. The filtrate from the glomerular capillaries passes from the Bowman's capsule into the renal tubule and the collecting duct. Fine. The filtrate contains all the substances that are diffused and ultra-filtered across the filtration barrier from the plasma. Small quantities of the proteins are present, but are reabsorbed in the proximal tubule. Bulk of glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed into the peritubular capillaries, and only 0.5% is excreted as a urine. So rest all of the filtered contents is reabsorbed. Only 0.5% is excreted. Now coming to this renal tubular reabsorption, the proximal tubule reabsorb 80% of the glomerular filtrate. Approximately 65% of the sodium is reabsorbed in the proximal tubule through several active transport systems. Fine. Sodium transport is dependent on the parallel transport of the bicarbonate, chloride, amino acids, and glucose. Tubular reabsorption of the sodium and the other permeable solutes is also promoted by the phenomena of solvent drag during the transport of the water across the tubular epithelium. The glomerular filtration rate is regulated by the tubulo-glomerular feedback, which depends upon the functional integrity of the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Increased delivery of the chloride to the macula densa results in the activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone pathway, which along with the prostaglandins and the natriuretic peptides are involved in the sodium handling. So if there is increased delivery of the chloride to the macula densa, it results in what? Activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone pathway, which along with the prostaglandin and the natriuretic peptides are involved in the sodium handling. Potassium is completely reabsorbed in the proximal tubule. The amount in the urine depends upon its secretion in the distal tubule. Okay. The still tubules and the collecting ducts are responsible for the urinary acidification, concentration, and regulation of the sodium balance. The still tubules and the collecting ducts are responsible for what? Urinary acidification, concentration, and regulation of the sodium balance. Exchange of potassium or hydrogen ions for the sodium takes place in the distal tubules under the regulation of aldosterone. We all know that, right? That the aldosterone acts on the distal tubule, and it regulates the exchange of potassium and the hydrogen ions for sodium. Antidiuretic hormone mediates the absorption of water through the insertion of water channels on the luminal surface of the cells in the collecting tubules. ADH ADH mediates the absorption of water through the insertion of water channel called aquaporins on the luminal surface of the cells in the collecting tubules. Okay. Now coming to this renal acidification. The kidney help in the regulation of the acid-base balance by maintaining the plasma bicarbonate level at 22 to 26 milliequivalents per liter. So bicarbonate levels are maintained between 22 to 26 milliequivalents per liter. Depending on the dietary protein intake, children produce about 1 to 3 milliequivalents per kg per day of the non-volatile acids. Filtered bicarbonate is almost completely reabsorbed. Fine, this bicarbonate is completely reabsorbed, chiefly in the proximal tubules and the partially in the distal tubules and the collecting ducts. Bicarbonate consumed in the buffering of the non-volatile acid is regenerated by the renal excretion of the titrable acid and ammonia. Chronic acidosis augments the production of ammonia and thus elimination of acid, which will be demonstrated in this figure, and 17.2 and 17.3 demonstrate the mechanism of reabsorption of the bicarbonate and excretion of protons in proximal and distal tubules, respectively, which is chiefly mediated by the tubular secretion of the hydrogen ions. So the excretion of protons, that is excretion of the H plus in the proximal and the distal tubule occurs, which is mediated by what? Which is mediated by the tubular secretion of the hydrogen ions. Okay, in the proximal tubule, filtered bicarbonate combines with the H plus to form the H2CO3, which rapidly dissociates to H2O and the CO2 catalyzed by the brush water carbonic anhydrase. And this CO2 which is produced, it gets diffuses along its concentration gradient into the tubular cell, combining with the H2O2 to regenerate the H bicarbonate, and that is absorbed into the capillaries. The proximal tubule thus reabsorbs 85 to 90% of the filtered bicarbonate. The remainder is reabsorbed distally. Fine. So the important thing is this, that the proximal tubule thus reabsorbs 85 to 90% of the filtered bicarbonate ion, and the remainder is absorbed distally. In the distal tubule, the secreted hydrogen ion combined with the major urinary buffers. Fine. So what was happening? That in the distal tubule, the secreted this bicarbonate ion, which is secreted H plus ions, combines with the major urinary buffer, sodium hydrogen phosphate, and the ammonia to form the NaH2PO4 and the NaH4 plus respectively. The distal nephrons regenerate and maintain the steep pH gradient between the blood and the urine, but its capacity to secrete the H plus ion is small. Thus, even a slight increase in the distal HCO3 minus delivers result in increase in the urine pH. Extracellular fluid volume and the potassium balance also regulate the H plus secretion and the bicarbonate reabsorption. Okay. Now let's read about the development and the development of structure and function. The fetal kidneys are lobulated structure that ascend from the size between 12 and 40 weeks, with the renal length increasing from about 1 to 4 centimeter. The fetal bladder is visualized by 10 to 14 weeks, and its capacity increases steadily to about 50 ml at the term. Beyond 16 weeks, the amniotic volume is principally dependent on the urine production of the gestation. These kidneys can be visualized on the antenatal ultrasound by 12 to 13 weeks. Fine. Kidneys can be seen on the antenatal ultrasound by 12 to 13 weeks, and beyond 16 weeks, amniotic volume is principally dependent on the urine production of the gestation. The kidneys grow steadily in the pelvis to their normal position between 6 and 9 weeks. Now coming to the GFR, that is glomerular filtration. This it's not GFR, it's glomerular filtration just that begins at 5 to 9 weeks of gestation, initiating the urine formation. The fetal kidney receives about 2 to 4% of the cardiac output, which increases in the neonates to 15 to 80%. Fine. So we read that fetal kidney receives only about 2 to 4% of the cardiac output, but which increases to in neonates, the kidneys receive about 15 to 18% of the cardiac output. Serum creatinine level is high at the birth, reflecting the maternal values, but falls rapidly to zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 deciliter by the end of the first week. Okay. And most 92% neonates pass urine within the first 48 hours. The GFR is low at the birth, that is 15 to 20 ml per minute per 1.73 meters square in the first 3 days in the term, 10 to 15 in the preterm, but increases to 35 to 45 at 2 weeks and 75 to 80 by 2 months. Okay. Now coming to the tubular function. The tubular function contributes to the urine formation around 14 weeks of gestation. Postnatal tubular maturation follows a pattern similar to GFR, but the maturation is relatively delayed. Infants have reduced sodium and bicarbonate reabsorption and a limited ability for hydrogen ion exchange. The pH of the urine in the newborn is high for the degree of the acidemia. Okay. Now coming to the urine osmolality, the capacity of the kidneys to concentrate or dilute urine is limited in the neonates. An infant can concentrate his urine to a maximum of 700 to 800 milliosmol per kg, whereas the older child can achieve 1200 to 1400 milliosmol per kg. Growing babies utilize most of the protein available for growth rather than catabolize to urea. Decreased production and the excretion of urea results in relatively hyperosmolar interstitium and reduced urinary concentration. Okay, the newborn can dilute the urine to a minimum of 50 milliosmol per kg, like an older child. However, the time taken to excrete a water load is longer. Thus, delayed feeding and over-diluted or concentrated feeds are potentially harmful. Maturation of the renal function. Renal function continues to improve during the first 2 years of the life, at the end of which various parameters of the renal function approach the adult values if corrected to standard surface area. Structural growth parallels the functional maturation. So this was all about the renal anatomy and physiology that we read. The thing which is left is this the explanation of these images. Let's read it. Reabsorption of bicarbonate in the proximal tubule. Are the protons H plus are secreted into the lumen, chiefly through the actions of sodium hydrogen exchanger. We are reading about the reabsorption of this bicarbonate in the proximal tubule occurs. Where is this bicarbonate? This is the tubular lumen. This is the proximal epithelial cell, and this is the interstitial fluid. So this is the lumen from where the fluid is moving out. Okay. From here, bicarbonate is being absorbed. See, bicarbonate is coming inside. Oh, this is not bicarbonate. This is the bicarbonate, sorry. So what is happening? Protons are excreted into the lumen, H plus are secreted. See, H plus is getting secreted into the lumen through the action of sodium hydrogen exchanger. Sodium is coming in and the hydrogen is coming out. Sodium hydrogen exchanger 3. First one is the sodium hydrogen exchanger 3, and less by the hydrogen ATPase. Fine, so this hydrogen is secreted into lumen also by the hydrogen ATPase. Which one is the second one? H plus ATPase. But more hydrogen into the lumen is secreted by the sodium hydrogen exchanger. Second one, okay, fine. This happened that hydrogen is secreted into the lumen. This is the first step. Okay. Second, or what else? Secreted hydrogen combines with the filtered luminal bicarbonate to form the H2CO3. Fine. The hydrogen which is secreted from the proximal tubule and the bicarbonate which is filtered from the lumen. Fine. This filtered, they combine to form this bicarbonate, which under the action of the luminal membrane carbonic anhydrase, luminal membrane carbonic anhydrase, dissociates to form the H2O and CO2. Now this H2 and CO2 are formed. The CO2 travels across the membrane into the cell wall where it combines with the OH minus to regenerate the bicarbonate. So yeah, right, from the tubular lumen, the bicarbonate has come inside the cell. Fine, the CO2, which is in the gaseous form, it crosses the membrane and comes inside the proximal tubular epithelial cell, and then again it combines with the OH minus. Fine, this OH minus, uh, which regenerate the bicarbonate. The bicarbonate, fine, this bicarbonate is now formed. The bicarbonate and the sodium cross the basolateral membrane using the bicarbonate sodium bicarbonate symport exchanger. It is a symport. Okay. So this Third one is the sodium bicarbonate symport exchanger. This basolateral membrane is now being crossed by this bicarbonate and the sodium using the sodium bicarbonate symport exchanger. Sodium exits the cell via the active transport by sodium potassium ATPase. Sodium is also, this is the sodium potassium ATPase one. Fourth one. Sodium potassium ATPase. And this was third one was what? This is sodium bicarbonate symport exchanger one. Okay. So this is how sodium is reabsorbed into the interstitial fluid. Electrogenic hydrogen secretion generates a small lumen positive voltage. Because of this H plus coming into the lumen, a small lumen positive voltage promotes the paracellular flow of the cations. Proximal tubular cells are also the site of sodium coupled reabsorption of the glucose amino acids and the phosphate. Okay, and the mitochondrial synthesis of the NH4 and its exits into the lumen using the NH3 is not shown here. Let's move ahead in this image. Let's read about it. This is the mechanism of acidification and the potassium excretion in the distal renal tubules. Okay, in this image we will see what acidification and the potassium excretion in the distal renal tubules. So this one is the first image. A, what is happening here? Alpha intercalated cells of the cortical collecting duct secrete H plus through the H plus ATPase and the H plus hydrogen potassium ATPase, independent of the sodium transport. So there are two. First one is the H plus ATPase, and the second one is what? Hydrogen potassium ATPase. Both these are independent of the potassium. So they are doing what? From the intercalated cells, hydrogen is going out into the tubular lumen. That is how the acidification will occur, right? That the hydrogen is moving out. The hydroxyl ion generated in the cell through the dissociation of the H2O combines with the CO2 to form the bicarbonate. So this hydroxyl ion, where what is it produced from? So the hydroxyl ion, through the dissociation of the H2O, it combines with this CO2 to form what? Bicarbonate. Bicarbonate is formed, which exits the cell by the hydrogen chloride exchanger. Fine. This is the hydrogen chloride exchanger. So this bicarbonate is again being reabsorbed here into the interstitial fluid by the hydrogen chloride exchanger. The secreted H plus is buffered by the luminal ammonia to form the NH4 plus. So there will be a tubular ammonia which will be present. Luminal ammonia. Wait. So this H plus which comes out, this combines with the tubular ammonia to form this ammonium ion, and the phosphate to form the HPO4 to H2PO4 minus termed as the triple acid to prevent drop in the luminal pH that would prevent the further H plus secretion. Okay. Also, the ammonia is formed. Along with that, its phosphate it combines with the phosphate ion to form this H2PO4. Okay, and this will prevent the luminal pH to drop. So it will prevent the further H plus secretion. This was all about how the acidification is occurring, right? Now coming to the image B, we read about the image A first. Now coming to the image B. Principal cells mediate sodium absorption and potassium cells. This acidification was done by what? Intercalated cells, and the principal cells, these cells, they mediate what? Sodium absorption and potassium secretion. Sodium is absorbed through the apical membrane by an amiloride sensitive sodium channel and exits basolaterally by the sodium potassium ATPase. So sodium is being absorbed from the tubular lumen. Sodium is being absorbed through what? Amiloride sensitive sodium channel. Okay, and exits the basolateral membrane. It is again right from here. It is exiting the basolateral membrane using this. Fourth one is what? Sodium potassium ATPase. So sodium is being reabsorbed here. Now the sodium transport creates a lumen negative in transepithelial potential that increases the rate of H plus secretion by the intercalated cells. This is how these two are related, right? Sodium is being transported inside the principal cell, so the positive charge is decreased there. We have to balance the charge, right? If a positive charge is coming inside, then a positive charge should move outside also. So the sodium transport create a lumen negative transepithelial potential that increases the rate of H plus secretion by the intercalated cell. So to balance out this sodium coming inside the principal cells, this intercalated cells secrete more H plus. Aldosterone binds to the mineralocorticoid receptor and enhances the sodium absorption through the ENaC channels. This aldosterone binds to the mineralocorticoid receptor. Here, there is a mineralocorticoid receptor which stimulates both this uh, amiloride sodium channel, sodium absorption channel, and this potassium goes out. Aldosterone binds the mineralocorticoid receptor and enhances the sodium absorption through the ENaC channels and the hydrogen and potassium secretion by the hydrogen ATPase and the renal outer medullary potassium ROMK channels, respectively. So proteins called as the WNK kinases also influence the sodium and the potassium transports in the cells. This was all about the renal anatomy and physiology. Thank you.